Hello everyone, welcome to Software Skills. In this tutorial, we are going to discuss all the GUI, that is Graphical User Interface Testing. GUI testing includes the following important topics. What is GUI testing? Why do we need to perform GUI testing? Features of GUI testing, types of GUI testing, example of GUI testing, different challenges faced during the GUI testing. Before getting too deep into the above mentioned topics, firstly we will understand the graphical user interface. What is GUI? In the computer application, we have mainly two types of interface, such as command line interface and the graphical user interface. The command line interface is used when we need to type text and at the same time computer respond to that command. On the other hand, the graphical user interface is used to interrelate along with the computer by using the image rather than text. We have some of the critical GUI elements that can be used for communication between the user and application, like checkbox, list box, radio button, text box. Now we will move to our main point of discussion, which is GUI testing. What is GUI testing? GUI testing, it is one of the unique type of testing that is frequently used to check a graphical user interface features for application or the software. Usually the GUI testing is used to access a design of element or the features like text box, font size, font color, buttons, menus, links, layout, labels, text formatting, list, captions, icons, contents. The primary goal of the GUI testing is to validate the feature of software or the application performed as per the given requirement specification. The graphical user interface testing process implemented either manually or automatically and repeatedly executed by the third parties organization instead of developers or end users. In other words, we can say that the GUI testing is an approach in which the application user interface is tested if the application or an application work as expected relating to the user interface performance. Why do we need to perform GUI testing? After understanding the definition of GUI testing, we get the basic idea of it, but some questions will arise like, is GUI testing is test the application is required? Why do we need to perform GUI testing? And as testing of the features and logic of the application is not too much, then why do we need to waste time and execute the UI testing? If you want the answer of all the questions mentioned here, we need to think like a user, not a test engineer, because a user doesn't have any exposure to the specified application or the software. It is a user interface of application that determines whether a user will use the application more or not. Here firstly, a regular user understands the look and design of the application or the software and how easy it is for her or him in order to understand the user interface. He or she would never be going to use that application again if a user is not happy with the interface or unable to identify the application difficulties in order to understand it. Because of the above and mentioned here topics, graphical user interface testing must be implemented to ensure that the GUI testing delivers a defect-free application. Why is graphical user interface testing is being necessary? In software testing technique, the implementation of a graphical user interface is essential for executing the other type of software testing. As we know, delivering a quality product and matching the customer's requirement and the bug-free product is the primary concern of executing any type of testing. And it has been stated that we cannot review the quality into a product. That's why in order to enhance the quality of product, the development teams seek to develop it into their project from the beginning. To improve the quality of product, we can use the testing process earlier in the SDLC, that is Software Development Lifecycle, which is also known as shift left testing. The development team enhanced the time and the resources expended in the unit and the interface testing instead of waiting of system testing. After an application is complete and its result, the earlier error detection in the development process will cut down the cost of fixing them. As we are already aware, the unit and the interface or the API test are compatible for automation because the developer developed the unit test as the code. On the other hand, the API test lean to be a very stable and involved a less maintenance than the API GUI test. We can observe that the importance of shift left testing is enhancing, making a GUI testing valuable. Despite everything, manual GUI testing can be a time taken and the resource intensive process. Wherever the test automation is a bit more stimulating for GUI because the user interface can frequently modify earlier functioning, automated GUI test may fail, demanding a considerable determination to maintain them. However, the unit and the interface testing cannot be assessed all the area of system, particularly the crucial feature of the workflow and the usability. And this is the importance of the GUI testing, which is implemented from the user point of view rather than a developer's. By evaluating an application from the user's perspective help us to deliver the information to the project team where they need to choose whether an application is ready to deploy or not. For example, the drop-down list that appear in the Windows Firefox browser will be different from the Mac Firefox. These issues cannot be adequate because these are the operating system functions and we need to accept them in the same way. Features of GUI testing. Some of the most significant features of graphical user interface testing are: the GUI testing is used to execute the test in the matching or allocate on a Selenium Grid with fixed Selenium WebDriver. The execution of GUI testing will allow us to test a feature of the application from a user point of view. As a result of graphical user interface testing, we can get a customized test reports. It is also procedure a consistent object documentation at the same time for web element along with a dynamic IDs. Sometimes the internal performance of the system works correctly but the user interface doesn't. That's why GUI testing is an excellent approach in order to test other type of application as well. Types of GUI testing. The graphical user interface testing divide into the two different types. One is analog recording and the next one object-based recording. The first type of graphical user interface testing is analog recording. With the help of analog recording, people will always be connected with the GUI testing tool. Essentially, the GUI testing tool are used to encapsulate the precise keyboard press, mouse click, and the other user activities and then store them in a file for playback. Let's see one example to understand the basic function of analog recording. The analog recording might record that a user left click at the position of x is equal to 700 pixel, y is equal to 600 pixel, or enter the word sign in the box and then press the enter key on their keyboard. Object-based recording. Another GUI testing type is object-based recording. In this, the testing tool can connect programmatically to that application which need to be tested and observe each of the specific user interface model such as a text box, button, and the hyperlink as a distinct object. In the object-based recording, we can execute the activities like click, enter the text, read the state, whether it is enable or disable. After seeing all the type of GUI testing, we will move to our next topic, which is graphical user interface technique or the different methods. The technique or the method of GUI are manual based testing, model based testing, record and replay, hybrid test, code based testing. First, manual based testing. The first method of GUI testing is manual based testing. The simplest way of executing the GUI testing is purely using the application manually. Usually, manual based testing is implemented by enthusiastic parameters test engineer. In other words, we can say that in this approach, the graphical projects are tested manually by the test engineer following the requirements specified in the BRS, Business Requirement Document. As we already know that the manual testing is not productive because sometimes the execution of manual testing is slow. If we want to release high quality software appropriately, we should try to automate our testing strategy insistently. But in the current testing strategy, manual testing still plays an important role. We identify the right balance to execute a manual testing. Precisely talking about the GUI testing, the manual test engineer could have more subjective facts of the interface like its look and the feel and usability. Model-based testing. The next approach of the GUI testing is model-based testing. As we know that the model is a visual narrative of the system performance which helps us to understand and predict the system performance or the activity. The models are beneficial in order to develop a practical test cases with the help of the system requirement. In the model-based testing, we can see here the calculator, how it will be work in the model-based testing. First, we can suppose we have to do a addition of two numbers. Then, first input the number as in 15. Then we can press plus. Then second number we can input 55 and then checking the expected outcome, that is 70. Some of the essential requirements need to be considered while executing the model-based testing. That is creating a model, verify the input of the model for a particular model, analyze the expected result, implement the test, balance the actual result with the expected result, and an evaluation of added actions on the model. It is also a growing procedure in order to create the test cases with the help of the given requirement. Compared to the other GUI testing approach, model-based testing provides the benefit of fixing the adverse state that our GUI can accomplish. We can obtain the test cases with the help of some the other model-based approach like decision table and the charts. Decision table are used to control the output for each related input. Charts technique represent the state of the system and test the state after some input. Record and replay. We can perform the GUI testing with the help of automation tools which can be completed in the two types. Throughout the record part, the test steps are encapsulated by the automation tool, and in the playback, these recorded test steps are implemented on the application under the test. For example, QTP. The automation approach is the most common technique in which the GUI automation testing is demonstrated itself is beyond record and playback method. As it is name recommended, like record and replay approach depend on having a test engineer use a specific tool to record a testing session. The significant benefit of the record and replay approach is that it doesn't need any coding skill, that reduces the barrier for us to use it. And the major drawback of record and replay test is their weakness. Since the user interface is a part of application that frequently modify and replay on the strategy used for interrelating with the element on the screen. Hybrid test. The hybrid tests are the different approach in order to perform the GUI testing at the current time. It is a beneficial technique for the non-technical background users to develop a test cases by recording their sessions, and after that, the user who is familiar with the coding can further control this recorded test technically, and the person who have the coding knowledge can further manipulate these records test to modify them for the more complex situations. Code-based testing. Another method of performing graphical user interface testing is code-based testing. In order to develop test cases by using the code, the GUI testing provides some GUI testing tool. To discover more difficult test scenarios, we can use code-based testing approach. Subsequently, their code test cases can be designed in source control along with the application's code. The persistable disadvantage of the code-based method that they either involve us to take a developer away from the coding and have them write a test cases or that teach our test engineer to code or programming. Example of the GUI testing. After describing the graphical user interface, the description of the GUI testing follows tweaks, and we can state that it is a method of testing which is used to validate whether the GUI of the product. Let's see the various elements or the object which can be tested under a GUI testing. Essentially, the graphical user interface testing includes the GUI testing checks the various sections of the screen, analyzing a screen in the different resolution. If the checks whether the interface is attractive or the pleasant or not, and whether the image has good clarity. The GUI testing analyzes the heading whether it is correctly aligned or not. The GUI testing tests the spelling, position, size, width, height of the feature of element, color of the font, the color of hyperlinks, alignment of the image, size of the image, color of the error message, warning message. Testing of the scroll bars as per the size of the page, if any, front, whether it is transparent or the readable or not. It is also checked the error message which are getting displayed or not, and the disable fields if any. It also makes sure that the user must not get frustrated while using the system interface. Different challenges faced during the GUI testing. In software testing, the most frequent drawback or the problem while performing the regression testing is that GUI changes regularly, and it became a very tough situation for a test engineer in order to perform the test and find whether it is a problem or improvement. The problem display when we don't have any document related to a GUI modification. Some of the most frequent challenges during the execution of the graphical user interface are as follows: stability of the object, technology support, instrumentation. GUI testing tools, we can say, in order to identify the bug or the defect which occurred during the design phase, we will use a graphical user interface testing tool and helps to improve the quality of the software. By using tools, we can easily detect the loopholes rather than implementing the GUI testing manually. Based on the application behavior, we can test the application that is involve the mouse and the keyboard action, and some of the addition GUI items such as dialog box, buttons, menu bars, toolbars, and the edit fields. Some of the most commonly used GUI testing tools are like Renorex Studios, Eggplant, Squids, AutoIT, RIA Test. From this tutorial, we can see the GUI testing topics and the types of testing as well. We can say that the execution of the graphical user interface testing is essential and accomplishment of the software product release on how the GUI interrelate with an end user and help in using several attributes. The execution of the graphical user interface testing is much needed as it ensures the application present, looking and work equally in the different platform and the browser. In GUI testing, sometimes executing the manual GUI testing can be repetitive and tedious process. However, the automation is a highly suggested for the GUI testing process. Thank you.